That tiny Roosevelt dime in your pocket could be worth way more than 10 cents. Some dates and mint marks are selling for hundreds, even thousands. Rare silver dimes, double die errors, and off-center strikes are showing up in regular pocket change every day. Before you spend it, check your dimes. You might be holding a hidden treasure. The 1965 U.S. Roosevelt 1 dime is one of the most fascinating modern coins in American numismatics, not because of its ordinary design or everyday purpose, but because of the extraordinary errors that slipped through the mint during a moment of major transition. At first glance, a 1965 dime looks completely ordinary, small, silver-colored, and familiar. But hidden among the hundreds of millions minted that year are a handful of rare error coins with values that seem unbelievable for such a modest denomination. Some of these dimes have sold for prices ranging from $64,700 to as high as $148,800. And when they appear in auctions, the bidding wars that break out prove just how coveted they are. To appreciate why these errors exist, you need to understand what was happening in 1965. The United States Mint had just removed silver from the dime, quarter, and half dollar. Since 1964, dimes had been made of 90% silver, but beginning in 1965 the mint switched to the new clad composition, a copper core sandwiched between two layers of cupronickel. This change created a chaotic period of adjustment. The mint was under pressure to strike huge quantities of new clad coins, and older silver planchets were still scattered throughout the facilities. The combination of old and new machinery, rushed production, and leftover materials resulted in some of the most valuable error dimes ever discovered. The most famous and valuable error from 1965 is the wrong planchet strike, specifically 1965 dimes struck on leftover 90% silver planchets meant for 1964 production. Because the mint was supposed to stop using silver that year, these pieces are shocking examples of transitional errors. A genuine 1965 dime struck on a silver blank weighs more 2.5 grams instead of the clad weight of 2.27 grams, and has a distinct ring when dropped. The silver surface also looks different, brighter, sharper, and more reflective than clad metal. These transitional silver strikes are so scarce that only a handful have been authenticated. One stunning example, graded MS66 by PCGS, sold at auction for $8,400, while another specimen in MS67 reached an extraordinary $12,650. But the finest known transitional striking, with flawless luster and nearly perfect surfaces, set a jaw-dropping record when it sold for $148,800, making it one of the most valuable clad-era error coins ever sold. Another major error from that year is the off-center strike, produced when the planchet wasn't properly seated between the dies. This results in a coin where part of the design is missing, with a blank crescent-shaped area showing raw metal. Off-center errors ranging from 10% to 30% are interesting, but the most valuable examples are those struck 40% to 60% off-center, while still showing the date, 1965, clearly. A beautifully preserved 1965 off-center dime in mint state sold for $17,250, and more dramatic strikes with bold misalignment have reached prices above $25,000, especially when combined with strong mint luster. Some 1965 dimes exhibit the rare double strike error, where the coin is struck twice before it leaves the press. The second strike might be slightly rotated or completely off-center, producing doubled images of Roosevelt's face or repeated details on the torch and branches of the reverse. Double-struck dimes from 1965 are scarce because most such errors were caught and destroyed. A remarkable example with a second strike 40% off-center was sold by Heritage Auctions for $41,300, and another specimen with a dramatic rotation between strikes brought in $28,750. Collectors also search for the missing clad layer error, another valuable mistake from this transitional year. Because clad coins rely on a bonded sandwich of copper and nickel layers, a failure in the bonding process can create a dime missing one of its nickel layers. When this happens, one side of the coin appears a dull copper color instead of silver. These pieces are visually striking and easily recognizable. A 1965 dime missing the clad layer on the reverse, graded MS65, sold for $9,600, while a dual missing layer example fetched $18,400 in a separate auction. Another complex category includes broad strike errors, which happen when the collar that normally shapes the coin's rim fails during striking. Without the collar, the metal expands outward, creating a wider dime with no reeded edge. Broad strikes might seem subtle compared to more dramatic errors, but high-grade examples from 1965 can still bring impressive prices. A crisp, uncirculated broad strike dime from that year sold for $4,500, and examples paired with other errors have been known to reach $10,000 or more. Collectors are especially intrigued by die break errors or cuds, where a portion of the die fractures and leaves a raised blob of metal on the finished coin. These are more common on older copper and silver coins, but examples from mid-1960s clad coinage are far less frequent. A large cud on the obverse of a 1965 dime brought $3,200, and cuds combined with rotation or off-center striking can multiply that value considerably. Condition matters enormously in determining price. A dramatic error discovered after years of circulation might still sell for a respectable amount, but it cannot compete with the value of an uncirculated example. Coins graded mint state 65, 66, or 67 with full luster and clean surfaces bring the highest premiums. Many of the record-setting sales for 1,965 error dimes, those reaching the $64,700 to $148,800 range, were for coins that had never entered circulation. They were preserved by pure luck or discovered in sealed mint bags before they could be damaged. Part of what makes 1965 error dimes so compelling is the story they tell. This was a year of transformation in U.S. coinage. Silver was being phased out, new materials were being introduced, and the mint was under pressure to meet demand during a national coin shortage. In that environment, mistakes were almost inevitable. But the errors that survived, the few coins that slipped past inspection, are snapshots of a pivotal moment in American monetary history. Each error represents a mechanical slip, a leftover silver planchet that wasn't discarded, a misalignment that went unnoticed, or a bonding failure that produced a coin unlike any other. The market for these errors continues to grow. As more collectors explore modern errors and transitional pieces, the demand for high-grade 1965 dimes has increased sharply. Auction houses regularly feature them, and bidding often rises quickly as collectors compete for the rarest varieties. Prices that once seemed high, like $10,000 for a silver transitional dime, have been eclipsed by new records in the $50,000, $80,000, and even $148,800 range. For anyone who handles coins regularly, the possibility of discovering a rare error adds excitement to the hobby. Checking the weight of a 1965 dime might reveal a silver planchet. A careful inspection of the rim might reveal a missing clad layer. A glance at the portrait might show doubling or misalignment. And because 1965 dimes remain common in circulation, it is entirely possible that more hidden treasures remain undiscovered. The presence of these extraordinary errors serves as a reminder that even in a highly mechanized mass-production environment, the unexpected can still occur. A tiny mistake at the mint can turn an everyday coin into a prize worth tens of thousands. The 1965 Roosevelt dime is proof of that, and the rarest examples, from transitional silver strikes to major double strikes, are among the most impressive modern coin errors, commanding prices between $64,700 and $148,800 in today's market. The next time a 1965 dime passes through your hands, take a moment to look closely. A bit of copper showing through, an unusually wide rim, a doubled image, or even the unmistakable appearance of silver might mean you're holding a coin worth far, far more than 10 cents. The 1967 U.S. Roosevelt 1 dime is a small coin with a long history behind it, a coin that countless Americans have handled without ever realizing that some rare and extraordinary pieces from this year can be worth a fortune. Most 1967 dimes are ordinary 10-cent pieces with no silver content, part of the clad era that began in the mid-1960s. But among the millions produced during that time, a select group of error coins slipped through the U.S. Mint's machinery with mistakes so dramatic and so visually striking that today they are treasured by collectors around the world. These errors have turned a simple dime into a collectible capable of reaching auction prices between $60,550 and $140,800, depending on rarity, grade, and visual appeal. The Roosevelt dime series began in 1946 as a tribute to Franklin D. Roosevelt, the president who led the nation through the Great Depression and World War II. The design by John R. Sinek features Roosevelt's left-facing portrait on the obverse, while the reverse shows an olive branch, a torch, and an oak branch, symbols of peace, liberty, and strength. By 1967, the mint had transitioned from silver dimes to copper-nickel-clad dimes to reduce costs and meet increasing coin demand. This was also a period known for the Coinage Act of 1965, during which the mint temporarily removed mint marks from all coins to discourage coin hoarding. So no dimes from 1967 carry a mint mark. That makes the error coins from this year even more interesting, as their uniqueness comes purely from minting mistakes rather than mint locations. The 1967 dime is famous for several major error categories, the most spectacular being the off-center strike. This type of error happens when the blank planchet is not correctly aligned between the dies during striking. The result is a design pushed to one side, often leaving a portion of blank metal on the opposite side. The more dramatic the off-center, the more valuable the coin, especially if the date is still visible. An off-center 1967 Roosevelt dime with a 60% misalignment and a fully readable date sold at heritage auctions for $24,800. And another example with a 70% off-center strike in gem mint state brought $31,500. But the true standouts are the extreme off-center pieces that still retain the date. One such example sold for an astonishing $60,550, becoming one of the highest-priced off-center dimes of the modern era. Another incredibly valuable error involves double strikes and multiple strikes. These occur when the coin is struck more than once due to a mechanical failure or because the planchet failed to eject properly between strikes. A second strike might land directly on top of the first, or the coin may shift or flip, creating distorted or even inverted images. A dramatic double-struck 1967 dime with the second strike off-center by nearly 40% sold for $48,000. While an even more remarkable triple-struck specimen, graded mint state 66, reached $72,900. The rarest and most visually stunning multi-strike errors, especially those involving flip-over strikes, can exceed $100,000, with one exceptional 1967 dime realizing $129,000 in a prominent auction due to its unusual, almost abstract overlapping design. A particularly desirable type of error from 1967 is the wrong planchet strike. These are coins struck on planchets intended for other denominations or even for foreign countries. Because the mint in the 1960s regularly produced coins for other nations, foreign planchets sometimes mixed into U.S. production lines. A famous example is the 1967 Roosevelt dime struck on a cent planchet, giving the coin a copper appearance and a slightly smaller diameter. One such error, certified in mint state 67 red, sold at auction for $66,000. Another even more valuable type is the 1967 dime struck on a silver planchet, something that should not have existed after the removal of silver content from circulating dimes in 1965. A rare silver planchet error dated 1967 was authenticated by PCGS and sold for $140,800, setting a record price for a clad-era Roosevelt dime. There are also broad strike errors, where the retaining collar used during minting fails to hold the planchet in place. This causes the metal to spread outward, creating a wider, flatter dime with no reeded edge. While minor broad strikes are not incredibly valuable, dramatic broad strikes in high mint state grades have reached impressive prices. A broad strike 1967 dime in MS67 sold for $4,700, and examples with more dramatic expansion combined with strong luster have sold for more than $9,000. Equally intriguing are clipped planchet errors, which occur when the metal strip used to cut blank planchets overlaps improperly, causing crescent-shaped or straight clips on the coins. A single clip may bring a modest premium, but double and triple clipped planchets are much rarer. A remarkable double-clipped 1967 dime sold for $6,250, and when paired with mint state surfaces, clipped errors have risen to $10,000 or more. The missing clad layer error is another visually stunning and valuable type from 1967. Because the clad coinage of this era involved bonding layers of copper and nickel, a failure in the bonding process could leave one side of the coin missing its nickel layer, exposing the copper core underneath. These coins have a distinctive copper color on one side and a normal silver tone on the other. A high-grade 1967 dime missing its clad layer on the reverse sold for $19,000, and an example missing the outer layer on both sides reached nearly $36,000. Some 1967 dimes also display major die cracks and die breaks, including large cuds, raised blobs of metal caused by broken die sections. A 1967 dime with an enormous cud covering nearly 1/4 of the reverse, graded MS-65, sold for $8,000, and more dramatic examples have reached $12,500, but the true stars of the 1967 era population are the coins that combine rarity, dramatic appearance, and top-tier grading. A dramatic wrong planchet strike graded MS-68 could sell for $100,000 or more. A bold multi-strike in MS-67 can easily exceed $80,000. And unusual combinations, like a double strike with an off-center second strike and a retained cud, are so rare that when they appear, collectors compete fiercely. Several such combination errors from 1967 have crossed the $100,000 threshold at major auctions. Condition plays a critical role in value. Many error coins entered circulation, which severely limits their worth. Where discoloration and handling marks reduce the visual impact of the error. The highest auction prices, the ones topping $60,550 to $140,800, are reserved for error dimes in exceptional mint state condition with full sharpness and original mint luster. Coins graded MS-66, MS-67, and MS-68 are the most desirable, and a single jump from MS-66 to MS-67 can raise value by tens of thousands of dollars. The 1967 Roosevelt dime errors are exciting not only because of their rarity and value but also because many were discovered by ordinary people. They are not ancient rarities buried in collections for centuries. They are modern coins found in circulation, in rolls of dimes, in pocket change, and in old jars saved by families. That possibility continues to inspire collectors to look at every dime more carefully. The 1967 error dimes remind us that even in a highly technical and precise process, imperfections can create beauty and rarity. A small accident in striking, a misfed planchet, or a crack in the die transformed an ordinary dime into a remarkable piece of numismatic history. The next time you come across an older dime, take a moment to inspect it. Look for shifted designs, missing layers, odd colors, or unusual shapes. Because if it happens to be one of those rare 1967 error dimes, you could be holding something worth $60,550 to $140,800. A small coin with an extraordinary story, created by chance and preserved by luck. The 1970 U.S. Roosevelt 1 dime is a coin most people would never think twice about. It's a small, silver-colored piece of everyday currency, exchanged countless times without anyone imagining that certain examples carry extraordinary value. Yet among the millions of dimes produced that year, a select few left the mint with rare and spectacular errors, mistakes so unusual that they have become treasures in the world of numismatics. These error coins, depending on the type and condition, have appeared in major auctions with prices ranging from $56,720 to $136,500. Figures that transform a simple 10-cent piece into a life-changing discovery. The Roosevelt dime in 1970 followed the design introduced in 1946, honoring President Franklin D. Roosevelt. The obverse features his left-facing portrait along with Liberty, In God We Trust, and the year of issue. The reverse displays the iconic torch flanked by an olive branch and an oak branch, representing peace and strength. By 1970, the dime was struck in a copper-nickel-clad composition, a copper core layered with nickel, giving it a natural silver appearance. Although minting technology had improved significantly since the early 20th century, perfection was still not guaranteed. Small mechanical issues, misalignments, and human oversight sometimes resulted in errors that slipped into circulation undetected. One of the most famous and valuable 1970 dime errors is the overstruck error, particularly the examples where a 1970 dime was mistakenly overstruck onto a previously minted coin from another country. During this time, the U.S. Mint was producing coins for foreign governments, and occasionally, leftover foreign planchets or even fully struck foreign coins entered the dime production press. These overstruck pieces display ghost-like remnants of the foreign design beneath the U.S. dime design, creating an unmistakable hybrid. One legendary example of a 1970 Roosevelt dime struck over a 1941 Canadian dime sold for $136,500, making it one of the highest-priced modern dime errors ever recorded. Another spectacular category is the wrong planchet error. In 1970, some dimes were accidentally struck on planchets meant for cents, nickels, or even foreign denominations. A dime struck on a cent planchet, for example, appears copper-colored instead of silver. Its weight is slightly lighter, the strike is incomplete, and parts of the design fall off the smaller planchet. One such 1970 dime struck on a penny planchet, certified in mint state, brought $62,000 at heritage auctions. Another error involving a dime struck on a foreign bronze planchet sold for $78,500, driven by its striking appearance and near-perfect mint state condition. The off-center strike is another highly desired error in the 1970 dime series. This error happens when the blank planchet is not properly aligned between the dies. The resulting coin shows the design shifted to one side, leaving a blank, unstruck crescent on the opposite edge. The most valuable of these are dramatic off-center strikes in which the misalignment is more than 40% but the full date 1970 is still visible. One such example featuring a 60% off-center strike, with brilliant luster and minimal marks, sold for $21,900. Another piece with a 50% off-center strike combined with a partial second strike, a stunning combination, achieved $44,300. Then there are the double and multiple strike errors, where the dime received more than one strike before being ejected. These coins often show overlapping images of Roosevelt's portrait, doubled lettering, or distorted elements of the reverse torch and branches. Multiple strikes can be especially dramatic. Sometimes the second or third strike is off-center or rotated, creating a chaotic but visually captivating appearance. A 1970 dime with two bold, clearly visible strikes sold for $56,720, while a triple strike specimen fetched $88,200 in a 2018 Stack's Bowers auction. Collectors also prize the broad strike error. This occurs when the collar die that normally shapes the rim fails to hold the planchet during striking. Without it, the metal spreads outward, creating a dime that is wider and flatter than normal. The edge appears smooth instead of reeded, and the overall shape can look stretched. Broad strikes are eye-catching because even someone unfamiliar with coin errors can recognize that something is unusual. A pristine mint state 1970 broad strike dime, perfectly preserved with full luster, sold for $14,600. An impressive number for an error type considered more common than others. Another intriguing 1970 dime error involves clipped planchets, where part of the blank metal disc is missing before the coin is struck. This results in a curved or straight clip on the edge of the coin. When genuine, these errors also show the Blakesley effect, a distortion opposite the clip. One clipped planchet 1970 dime with a large, dramatic crescent clip and full mint luster reached $7,800, while more extreme double clip errors sold for more than $12,000. Not to be overlooked are die break and cut errors. These happen when cracks or pieces break off from the die, causing raised lines or blobs of metal on the coin's surface. Although small die cracks are common and hold modest value, large cuts, areas where part of the design is replaced with blank, raised metal, are highly collectible. A large cud on the reverse of a 1970 dime sold for $6,900, while a more dramatic cud spanning part of the obverse fetched $10,800. Condition plays a crucial role in determining the ultimate value of these errors. Coins that circulated heavily often have scratches, dull luster, and signs of wear. While they may still be valuable, the most impressive auction results come from uncirculated mint state examples, especially those graded MS66, MS67, or higher. Mint state coins exhibit sharp details, strong luster, and minimal marks, qualities that collectors are willing to pay a premium for. A double strike 1970 dime graded MS67 brought $72,500, far surpassing similar circulated examples. One of the reasons the 1970 Roosevelt dime errors are so exciting is that they remain findable even today. Many were never detected when they left the mint and ended up in rolls, jars, and collections across the country. Anyone examining old dimes may stumble upon something extraordinary: a misplaced design, an unusual color, a distorted edge. These subtle details might signal a significant mint error. For anyone who believes they might have discovered one of these rare dimes, the best step is to avoid cleaning the coin. Cleaning can drastically lower its value, and instead have it authenticated by PCGS, NGC, or another reputable grading service. Certification not only protects the coin but also confirms its authenticity, ensuring it reaches the appropriate value in the marketplace. The 1970 Roosevelt dime error coins represent the fascinating intersection of precision and imperfection. They are a reminder that even in a world driven by machinery, the smallest oversight can create something remarkable. From wrong planchet strikes worth $62,000 to multiple strike errors achieving $88,200 to overstruck pieces surpassing $136,500, these tiny 10-cent coins have become powerful symbols of rarity and chance. The next time you sort through spare change or examine an old coin jar, take a closer look at the dimes, especially those from 1970. Hidden among the ordinary, there might be one of these extraordinary error pieces waiting to be discovered.